When I walked into my parents' house, I froze. My mother's voice, Martha's, drifted from the dining room, calm, almost proud. My sister's kids eat first, and Anya's boys can wait for the crumbs. My sibling laughed. My father, George, didn't even look up. In the corner, my children sat with empty plates balanced on their knees, trying to act like they weren't hungry. My chest tightened, but inside everything went still. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply took my boys and walked out. What they didn't know, what none of them sensed, was that the moment they pushed my children into that corner, they pushed themselves somewhere far worse. Yes, I am Anya. And if I'm being honest, the scene in my parents' dining room didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the first time their hierarchy became so undeniable, so loud that even my silence couldn't protect me from it. The truth is, the pattern began years before my boys, Owen and Kai, were even born. When I was 17, still working my first part-time job, my mother, Martha, a woman who always sounded one step away from a crisis, asked if I could help a little with groceries. My father, George, practical to the point of coldness, nodded and said it would teach responsibility. $20 there, $50 here. And before I understood what was happening, giving became a reflex, a habit, then an obligation. By the time I was in college, they were sending me pictures of bills and notes about repairs. And when I'd call to ask if everything was okay, my mother's voice always quivered in just the right places. I didn't see it then, but looking back, it was choreography, perfectly timed worry performed on cue. When I graduated and landed my first full-time job, the requests changed tone. They weren't, "Could you help?" anymore. They became, "We really need you." Dental work for my father, a broken appliance, a car issue. It always arrived as an emergency, urgent, unavoidable, and somehow always aligned with the weeks my paycheck deposited. And then came Chloe, my older sister. She was the one my parents bragged about. The one whose kids, Emma and Finn, were always invited, always praised, always framed as the normal ones. When her car broke down, I helped with repairs. When she needed a boost with insurance, I covered that too. I told myself it was temporary. Family helps family, right? But when I married Liam, my husband, a patient, steady man who saw more than I ever did, the imbalance sharpened. He'd ask, "Do they ever offer to help us?" I'd laugh it off. "They're busy." But every time a holiday came around, every time there was something to celebrate, I noticed the seating arrangements, the invitations, the small moments of distance. Liam would gently step back during family conversations, as if he already understood he wasn't included in the script. And then came the kids. When Owen was born, my mother held him like he was fragile glass, delicate, uncertain, as if she didn't quite know where he fit. When Kai arrived 2 years later, my father congratulated us, but his eyes flickered with the same hesitation. I blamed exhaustion, stress, anything but prejudice. But children feel things adults ignore. Owen learned early that his cousins got the first turn. The best toys, the biggest slices. Kai picked up on the seating patterns, how Emma and Finn always sat near the adults while he and Owen were directed to play in the other room. And every time I felt something tighten in my chest, I convinced myself I was being oversensitive. The requests for money never stopped. They only grew. Mortgage help, medical bills, a sudden roof repair, a mysterious unexpected expense that always popped up right before holidays. And every time I said yes, believing that generosity would eventually bridge the emotional divide. But it never did. The moment I walked into that dining room, the moment I saw my boys in the corner with empty plates, it wasn't just a shock. It was recognition. Nothing had changed. I had been funding a hierarchy that pushed my children to the edges. I had been financing a family who saw my boys as crumbs, not kin. And standing in that doorway, watching Emma and Finn eat their second servings while my children stared at nothing, I finally understood. This wasn't a slip. This was the system. One I helped build without ever seeing it clearly. And once that realization settled into my bones, something else rose with it. Something cold, sharp, and absolute. I wasn't going to let them overlook my sons ever again. When I returned to my parents' house that evening, I thought the worst had already happened. I didn't realize the Real trigger was still waiting for me, sitting quietly beneath the surface like a fault line, ready to split. When I opened the front door, the house was too calm, the kind of calm that isn't peaceful, just empty. I stepped into the hallway, and that's when I heard it again. My mother, Martha, the woman who raised me on phrases like family first, was speaking with the same tone she used when justifying anything she didn't want to question. My sister's kids eat first, she said. And Anya's boys can wait for the crumbs. It's only practical. My sister, Chloe, the one who'd always assumed her children belonged at the center of every family moment, gave a small laugh. It's better they get used to it now, she added. They were born to live off what's left. And then my father, George, steady, logical, never emotional, closed the circle. They need to learn their place. That's just how things are. I moved before they even realized I was standing just beyond the doorway. In the dining room's warm light, I could see everything clearly. Emma and Finn finishing their second servings of pasta, sitting comfortably at the table, while Owen and Kai, my boys, hovered by the doorway, as if waiting for permission to exist. Owen met my eyes for half a second, and in that look I felt something fracture. He wasn't confused anymore. He understood. He understood exactly where the adults in this house had placed him. That was the moment. Not the crumbs, not the empty plates, not the laughter. It was the look on my child's face, the quiet shrinking, the practiced acceptance of less, that rewired something in me. I knew then that nothing I said inside that house would matter. Words wouldn't fix this. Confrontation wouldn't change them. But systems can be dismantled. Support can be withdrawn. And I, after years of paying for this family's comfort, held the one lever they never expected me to pull. The real trigger wasn't their cruelty. It was my decision in that instant to stop funding it. I didn't slam the door when I left my parents' house that night. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene. I simply placed a hand on each of my boys' backs, guided them toward the car, and buckled them in. The silence between us felt thick, heavy enough to push against my ribs, but I kept my breathing steady for their sake. When I pulled into our driveway, Liam, my husband, the man who never missed the shifts in my mood, opened the door before I even touched my keys. One look at me, one look at the boys, and he knew. He didn't ask what happened like most people would. He just said gently, "Let's get them settled first." He helped Owen find his sketchbook. He guided Kai toward the living room couch and put on the nature documentary he loved. Only when they were busy in their small worlds did Liam return to the kitchen, lean against the counter, and wait for me to speak. My mother said, "The cousins eat first," I whispered. "And my kids, my boys should wait for the crumbs." The muscle in Liam's jaw shifted, but he stayed still. "And my sister laughed," I continued. "My father backed them up. They meant every word." I expected anger from him, outrage. But instead, Liam breathed out slowly like he had always known this moment would arrive. "Sit," he said softly. "Anya," he began, "you've been supporting that entire household for years. Bills, repairs, payments, all of it, and you've never asked what any of that has cost you. Not in money, but in dignity." I wanted to defend them, but the truth had already been sitting in the back of my throat since the moment Owen looked at me with those sad, understanding eyes. "They don't see our sons as family," Liam said. "They see them as a complication, and they see you as the solution they can drain without ever being grateful." I couldn't argue. That silence, the one that settled between us, wasn't defeat. It was clarity. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly, taking my hand. I stood up, walked to the drawer where we kept important papers, and pulled out my laptop and a clean legal pad. I drew 4 columns. Mortgage, auto, utilities, emergencies. Then I opened the banking app. I scrolled page after page of transfers. Payments tagged with messages like, "Just until we're caught up," "Family helps family," "We're short this month." Under each category I wrote numbers, dates, amounts. The pattern was undeniable. 8 years of support, structured, steady, almost scheduled, I whispered. "They've built their lives around my income, and they've built their arrogance on it too," Liam replied. I'm done, I said. Then let's make a list, Liam said. First, call the mortgage company. I asked what my options were as a co-borrower. Refinancing, sell-off requirements. Second, call the auto lender. I instructed them to require my authorization for any credit adjustments. Third, utilities and payments adjusted. I cancelled every automatic transfer. Fourth, the savings transfer I'd created years ago as a temporary cushion for my parents, deleted permanently. Sixth, a family lawyer, not for lawsuits, just for clarity, boundaries, and documentation. Around 2 a.m., after the last account was adjusted, I closed my laptop. Do you feel better? Liam asked. No, I said honestly. I feel awake. There was no satisfaction. Not yet. Just a realization. The plan wasn't emotional. It wasn't explosive. It was administrative, methodical, precise. A quiet rebalancing long overdue. And by dawn, as I watched the first light stretch across our kitchen floor, I realized that they had taught my children to expect less. Now they would learn what happens when I stopped giving more. The first sign that my silence had reached them came exactly 48 hours later. I was packing Owen's art supplies when my phone lit up with my father's name. Anya, he said without greeting, there seems to be some kind of issue with the mortgage. The transfer didn't go through. There's no issue, I replied. I cancelled it. The pause was sharp, cutting through his certainty. You cancelled it. Without warning. I warned you, I said quietly. You just weren't listening. He inhaled sharply. This is your parents' home. We rely on. I know exactly what you rely on, I cut in. That's why it stopped. My sister Chloe, who had laughed while my son sat hungry, called next. Anya, what did you do? She demanded. My car payment got rejected. They said the co-signer blocked adjustments. I can't afford a hit on my credit right now. You'll have to manage, I said. The way you expect my sons to manage with whatever scraps they're given. That was a misunderstanding, she insisted. You said. I reminded her that my boys were born to live off what's left. Those were your words. Silence. Just the sound of someone recalculating their losses. My mother, Martha, the architect of emotional leverage, called through FaceTime. Sweetheart, she began shakily. Your father and I need to talk to you. The bills. Things are piling up faster than we expected. We're in a difficult situation. Are you? I said calmly. You know we depend on that support. It isn't fair to punish us like this. Punish. The word hung there. You punished my sons, I said. Right in front of me. That was different, she insisted. We were being realistic about how the world works. No, I said. You were being realistic about how much you thought you could get away with because you assumed I'd always pay. Her expression cracked. First confusion, then fear. Anya, please. We could lose the house. And my children, I said softly, could have lost their sense of worth if I stayed silent. She flinched. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply laid out the truth. The mortgage help won't return. The automatic transfers are gone. The cushion fund is gone. The co-signing access is locked. From now on, you live on your income like every other adult. Anya, she whispered, you can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied. I'm stopping what you were doing to my children. Another silence, this one raw, unshielded. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix the fallout. They were. I heard the beginning of something they never thought they'd feel. Desperation. The emptiness wasn't on my children's laps. It was in my parents' bank accounts, in the security they believed I owed them. Their hierarchy collapsed exactly where it was built, on the foundation of my silence. In the weeks that followed, the fallout settled into place with a quietness that felt almost surreal. There were no dramatic confrontations, no midnight arrivals at my door. Instead, everything unfolded the way truth usually does. Slow, steady, and impossible to outrun. My parents, Martha and George, moved into a modest apartment on the other side of town. My sister, Chloe, picked up extra shifts to cover the payments she'd once assumed I'd manage. But in my own home, the air felt lighter. Owen started taking the main seat at our dinner table. Kai began talking more, laughing louder than he ever had at my parents' house. Liam stood beside me drying plates. "You seem quieter," he said. "I'm not quiet," I answered. "I'm settled." What they lost was comfort. What I gained was clarity. The day my parents taught my sons they were meant for crumbs was the day I stopped feeding a system that starved them. My boys don't sit in corners anymore. And I will never apologize for choosing their worth over anyone's comfort, not even my own parents'.